All right, so this is part 3 of lesson 5.4, equations of, or quadratics in factored form. So here are a couple of other examples, a couple things to do. So it says determine the coordinates of the x and y intercepts and the vertex. Then draw a sketch of the parabola showing all the critical points. So right now, we know, because this says x minus 4 and x plus 2, we know that the x-intercepts equal positive 4 and negative 2. Again, I'll go through why that is one more time. So x minus 4 has to equal 0. For this to be, so for that to be 0, either x minus 4 has to equal 0 or x plus 2 has to equal 0. So x has to equal 4 or x has to equal negative 2. When you bring the 2 over or you bring the 4 over, they change their signs. Okay, so that's why you don't have to do that. If you can just see from the graph that those are the x-intercepts, then you're good to go. So I'm just going to quickly draw those 2 points. So here's a 4 right here. Whoops, there's a 4. And there's a negative 2. All right, now for the y-intercept, we let x equal 0. So that's 0 minus 4, 0 plus 2, which equals negative 8. So the y-intercept is down here at negative 8. And now for the vertex, we are going to average the zeros. So we're going to take 4. Whoops, that's not a 4, that's an x. I'm losing my mind. We're going to take 4 and negative 2, and we're going to average them. That'll be the x-coordinate of the vertex. So 4 minus 2 equals negative 2 over 2, which equals negative 1. And then the y-coordinate of the vertex will be negative 1 minus 4 and negative 1 plus 2. So, oh, yeah, see? So I'm looking at this right now, and I can tell right away I've made a mistake somewhere, because this says this would be minus 5 and this would be positive 1. And I told you before that those two numbers should be the same number. And if they're not the same number, then you've made a mistake. And lo and behold, I did make a mistake. I made a mistake back here, because 4 minus 2, or 4 plus negative 2, is not negative 2. 4 plus negative 2 is positive 2. That makes that a positive 1. So y equals 1 minus 4 and 1 plus 2. That makes more sense. That's minus 3, and that's 3, and that gives me negative 9. So that means that the vertex is at the point 1, negative 9. So 1, negative 9 is like right there. So this is what the parabola looks like. Okay, it should be very symmetric. All right, let's take a look at part B. All right, so actually, why don't you try it, stop the video, try it, see how you do, and then turn the video back on and you can watch it. All right, so first I'm going to do the x-intercept. That means I'm going to let y equal 0. So that gives me 0 equals negative 3, x plus 2, x minus 1. So that means that x equals negative 2 or x equals 1. I'm going to switch colors here. All right, so negative 2, there's negative 2 right there again, and there is 1 right there. Okay, so the y-intercept, let x equals 0. So y equals negative 3 times 0 plus 2 times 0 minus 1. That equals negative 3 times 2 times negative 1, which equals positive 6. So the y-intercept is up here at positive 6. All right, and the vertex. I'm going to take, so the x-coordinate of the vertex is negative 2 plus 1 over 2. That equals negative 1 over 2, or negative 1/2. And then the y-coordinate of the vertex would equal -3 times -1/2 plus 2 times -1/2 minus 1. So -1/2 plus 2, or 2 minus 1/2 is 1.5, which is 3/2. And then -1/2 minus 1, that's going to go -3/2. All right, so -3 times 3 times -3 is -27, and 2 times 2 is 4. So -27 over 4, which would be, just for graphing purposes, 4 goes into 27 6 times, and, oh, but it's positive. Thanks. Yeah, positive. Positive 6 3/4. So at -1/2, we're at positive 6 3/4, which is just a little less than 7. So maybe about right there. This one, look at that. It's opening down. I wonder what's making that happen. What is it about this equation? I'm going to leave this with you. What is it about this equation that's making that open down? So it's an upside down U, whereas the original one was a right side up U. I wonder what's doing that. Think about that for a second. Okay, here's a couple more. Y equals -1/2 x times x plus 5. So again, the x-intercept, we're going to let y equal 0. So 0 equals -1/2 x times x plus 5. We have an x here and an x plus 5. So that means that x equals 0 or x equals -5. So we've got 0 and -5. For the y-intercept, let x equal 0. So that gives us y equals -1/2 times 0 times 0 plus 5. And that's going to equal 0, which it already is. We can see here it's crossing the y-axis. Parabolas can only have one y-intercept. They can have two x-intercepts, though. All right, and now for the vertex, I'm just going to squeeze this in here. I'm going to take these two zeros, so 0 minus 5 over 2 equals -5/2. That's the x-coordinate of the vertex, so -5/2 is equal to -2.5. And then the y-coordinate of the vertex is going to be -1/2 times -5/2 times -5/2 plus 5. So I'm just substituting -5/2 into this equation here. So that becomes -1/2 times -5/2 times +5/2. And that's going to be positive 25 over 8, which is equal to 3 1/8. So that's just going to be, I'm just going to do a rough estimate, 3 1/8, maybe about right there. So that's at -5/2, which is -2.5. So this is -3 is right there. So -2.5 is going to be in between those two. And so this looks like this. All right, and finally, the last one I'll do in pink. So for the x-intercept, let y equal 0. All right, so that gives us 0 equals x minus 2 squared. Now remember, squaring means x minus 2 times x minus 2. It does not mean x squared minus 4 or plus 4 or anything like that. So this bracket tells us that x equals +2. This bracket also tells us that x equals +2, which means there's only one x-intercept this time. And I'm going to do the y-intercept next. So y-intercept, you let x equal 0. So then that gives you y equals 0 minus 2 squared, which is -2 squared, which equals +4. So there's my y-intercept. Excuse me. And now for my vertex, I'm going to average my zeros. Oh, Well, I've got a 0 of 2, and I've got another 0 of 2 over 2, which is 2 plus 2 is 4 over 2. This is the x-coordinate of the vertex. So that equals, oh, so this point here is my vertex, because the vertex is happening at x equals 2, and we've already determined that when x equals 2, that's an x-intercept. So this is the x-intercept. That only gives me 2 points, but since this is the x-intercept, and I'm gonna go with yellow, and it's also the vertex, that means that my line of symmetry is right there, which now means that this point here can be reflected on the other side of the line of symmetry over there, and now I have 3 points to draw this. That one was a little bit trickier, but still doable. Okay, so once you know where your vertex is, then you also know where your line of symmetry is, and there should be, everything should be a mirror image on either side of that line of symmetry. All right, I'm going to stop there, and I will be back with the next video.